Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mirror's Edge. We're at downtown, 9:07 a.m. Not quite as catchy as Big Apple 3 a.m., but
I
Oh God.
did not understand that reference. Anyway, since
turtles in time.
So not okay, but that brings me back a core memory from high school where our high school was weird. We started class at 8:09 a.m. Ended school at 2:13 p.m. And we also I had lunch one year at like 10:54 a.m. So first off, why the hell are they having me get lunch at 10 a.m.? Second off, are those cops just gonna shoot at you for no reason if you just like walk by them?
No,
Okay,
they have to actively be aggroed on you.
okay, because it's like, hey, I'm walking you.
okay, so we've been on tangents for the last two parts mostly.
Hey! I want it for the record that I have occasionally tried to talk about the game. Sometimes, like at least twice, I've tried to talk about the game. So
What I was going
know.
to say is, where are we in the story right now?
We are looking for the assassin that actually killed the mayor candidate.
I thought we were trying to figure out who killed our sister.
No, our sister's been framed for murder.
Oh, okay. So we're trying to find out who actually did
Well,
it.
I mean, that's the general objective right now, but who killed Ropeburn and why?
Yeah. That's
It's
what
a
we're trying to figure out as
mystery.
well. You hired a professional.
Man, I hate first-person perspectives in games. And, I will give Mirror's Edge credit for doing a decent job at, like, emulating the feeling of having a body with weight, but, like, when you're dodging those trains, right, it still just feels like you're a camera sliding left and right instead of a person running and
Yeah,
swerving.
tripod syndrome is definitely an issue with first-person games. I was playing the Talos Principle recently, which is a very good puzzle game, first-person puzzle game. And granted, since it's a very like cerebral, stand around, think about what you're doing, place a thing, move around kind of game. You don't ever really need any precise movement, and so tripod syndrome doesn't really matter. But even still, it's not as inherently fun to control as some other games.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, to play devil's advocate for a moment, the kind of quick moving snappiness is a perk of the first person shooter genre that people enjoy in multiplayer, where they get to flex their APMs and do 360 no scope whatever kind of bullshit. It's in the same way that a lot of people get really into fighting game and timing on that.
The reason people like that shit is because on a keyboard, when you're using WASD, you can do finger gymnastics with the movement keys that you can't do with an analog stick, and use it to play mind games with your multiplayer opponents. It is a function that has absolutely no value in any kind of non-PvP or single-player game.
Yeah, this like Mirror's Edge here looks like the kind of game that would feel better to play with a analog stick versus a keyboard.
It kind of does, but the fundamental problem of being stuck on being a camera on a stick with a ghost of animated legs hovering below you is still present. They did more to disguise that than other games of this kind. In fact, I think I made a reference to this before, but the only other game I can think of off the top of my head that made similar efforts was the canceled Prey sequel that we never got. I'm not talking about Prey, the in-name only game that's more of a System Shock sequel than a Prey sequel.
Is Prey a series where they had a Prey 3 where it was PR?
No.
Oh, no. PR3?
No.
Okay.
There was only ever one official release until the reboot the System Shock game that isn't called System Shock for some reason. But
Fear. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Fear.
Yeah, you're probably thinking of Fear. Prey was a first-person shooter in which you played as a Native American who got abducted by aliens, I think it was. It's a very cheesy-ass fucking game, but a very good first-person shooter from that era when first-person shooters weren't quite Call of Duty'd into oblivion yet. It was supposed to have a sequel that was more of an open-world bounty hunting game. Very interesting concept, very intriguing pre-released footage, but it never got made in the end.
Yeah. I mean, so 2008, this is basically the height of Call of Duty, or if not the height, then right before the height, because if we look up Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1, the original version, that came out 2007. So 2008, that game was in full boom, and then, we get...
Modern Warfare 2 is probably coming out.
But yeah, and I remember that early on in the late 2000s, they kind of like flip-flopped between doing like a WW2 game and a more modern game. And then they realized that, World War II is so PS2, and then they kind of just stopped with that and started doing more modern stuff after. But it's interesting in that since this game was probably developed in a large part before Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out, it's not using many of the kind of things that Call of Duty Modern Warfare kind of like standardized. It does have the you get hit and then your healing jelly makes you better, although that's more of a Halo thing. Halo was kind of the one to come up with that gameplay gimmick. But obviously this game is kind of a first-person... It's not a shooter, obviously, but first-person games stopped taking risks once they realized they had a formula that was a gold mine for a good 10 years.
The thing is, they had a formula that was already a gold mine for a good 10 years before that one. It was just a different formula that was a different gold mine. The reason they shifted away from it was because they wanted to be more console friendly.
That is true, yes. I would suspect the major player base for Call of Duty was console versus PC. I don't have like numbers for that, but that's my gut.
Console had a weird as fuck relationship with first-person shooters until I want to say early 2000s, because it was really difficult to get a decent control system going for a first-person shooter game at the time. They hadn't quite nailed down the twin stick style we use in first-person games today yet. The N64 only had one analog stick. The PlayStation had none for a while.
It's funny because GoldenEye kind of feels like a prototype to that, except you're using buttons instead of a stick. So,
well, it's so freaking weird because GoldenEye, and by extension the original Perfect Dark, which used the same system, they use this system that no first-person shooter uses anymore, where you were aiming the camera, but you weren't expected to actually aim the gun.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a combination of a modern game and like Doom or Duke Nukem, where if you're shooting in the general direction of the thing you shoot at, it dies.
Well, it was more like your gun would angle separately from the screen with a sort of aiming assist system going on. So you'd have to pay attention to where your gun's aiming thing was going. It was, what was it, Alien Resurrection, I think? That was one of the first games to use the twin stick style.
Man, I wonder if there's like any sort of YouTube style documentary on the history of Aliens games, because they've flip-flopped between being perfectly average, industry defining, and studio destroying with very little in between. And that's like a pedigree that no other license has aside from like maybe Star Wars.
In today's YouTube atmosphere, I'm sure that someone has done a 7-hour retrospective.
Yeah, almost certainly. And hopefully, if it has closed captions, I can watch it at work when I'm supposed to be working. I mean, what? I'm a good employee. Please give me a raise.
I mostly just listen to that kind of stuff in the car while I'm doing deliveries and stuff.
I like to do that too, but it just depends on what kind of thing I'm doing. I get a lot of downtime at my job, but I don't want to have like the sound playing, obviously. So any like long video like that where there's closed captions and I can easily like pause it to do work when I actually need to do work and then play it again is like a yay. Please put closed captioning on your video. The YouTube auto closed captions does a decent-ish job, but especially when you're talking about like a fantasy or sci-fi game where there's a lot of made-up words, it doesn't really know what it's doing. So, closed captions is a nice thing to have.
The thing is, and I have some perspective on this because I did do some transcription work online some years back, but like it takes a long time to write accurate subtitles line by line for even shorter videos. I don't want to be the one who has to do that for something like an H-Bomber Guy video.
I think he probably does do that though, which is why those kinds of like 5-hour, like that's another reason why those sorts of 4-hour video essays take forever to work, is because if they want closed captions up when the thing comes out, that's like another week of work they have to do before, like, even when the video's done. It's
I'm
just
not sure, but I think he may even have paid to have a few translation subtitles done for some of his videos.
Damn, that's like actually awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's money that does a long way towards accessibility that you're not like guaranteed to get a return on that, so you're basically just spending money to make the product better for a little game.
The guy's view,
which is admirable.
The guy's view count is astronomical at this point, so I think he can afford it.
He can afford it. It's just, let's say, does having accurate closed captions in French add enough money to pay for that service? No, probably not. Is it something that should be done anyway? Yes, absolutely. So it's great that like he actually gets it to happen,
Yeah. I'm not sure how often he does it or which videos did it. I just remember seeing or hearing it for at least one video at some point. But like, okay. All right, we're back. We're back here. It's a little cowardly of them to turn the escalators off during this platforming sequence, I'm gonna say. That could have been...
Dude, I want to be able to run up the down escalator in a first-person game like this and fulfill my childhood dream that I was never able to do.
I was thinking more that it would be an interesting gameplay challenge to have to specifically, like, on the fly, tell which escalator is going up and which is going down and try to prioritize the up escalator or the down escalator, depending on which way you're going.
I appreciate that this game makes a concerted effort to have their locations feel like locations instead of just platforming gauntlets.
Oh, yeah.
Let's compare this, like, this mall feels like a real mall. Let's compare this to Dead Rising, which is a game that takes entirely place inside of a mall. This is Dead Rising is a game where the mall does not have its own bathroom.
So it's got Resident Evil 2 syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just like if you go to Dave's Tacos in the Dead Rising Mall, you have to walk all the way through a hallway and into like the indoor amusement park in order to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay.
It's funny because like public restrooms and shit are kind of really good locations to have in horror-based games. I mentioned that I was playing Fallout. Well, like every fucking dungeon that you would expect to have a bathroom has a bathroom, sometimes multiple ones, and you find the weirdest fucking shit in the bathrooms. In the Vampire Quest, they pulled some Twilight Zone shit with the restrooms. It's great. There was like a random ass teddy bear sitting inside the back of one of the toilets. You don't see it right away. You have to open the stall to find it. But when you open that stall, it's just like staring at you, and it's just like, what?
So I'm pretty sure in Dead Rising's case specifically, it was a gameplay decision because The toilets are save points, and all of the bathrooms also have warps to other bathrooms. So they probably just didn't want a save point / warp zone in the food court, even though that makes no sense.
Well, they could have had a bathroom that was destroyed and could not be used.
Yeah, you know what? That would be reasonable and logical, but that's all. Dead Rising's also not a reasonable or logical game, so makes that also makes sense. How much ammo? I know that this game isn't about the shooting, Ryan, but how much ammo do you generally get per gun that you find? Yeah. Okay.
That doesn't tell you.
I'm guessing you just get one. You just get like one clip, and Faith, who has like no harnesses or stuff on or anything on her body. I appreciate this detail, by the way, because it's something games usually ignore. She has no place to keep the guns, so she just discards them when they're empty.
I also appreciate that, although the way that she holds it just feels really weird in this game, considering how good the animation for her arms normally is.
Well, everything else looks very naturalistic, but she's holding it in that extremely awkward first-person shooter stance that doesn't actually match up to where you would hold a gun if you were actually holding one.
Yeah, that's done as an aiming mechanism. I understand. Like, they do it that way so that you'll know where you're going to shoot. I get it, but...
Well, I mean, that's what iron sights are for, but, video gamers don't want to be staring at a big gun obscuring their screen the whole time. And when you're actually shooting from the hip, you'd be holding your gun too low for it to be seen on screen. And the gun needs to be on screen so that you know which gun you're using at all times. So,
I mean... I don't know, something about that iron sight is kind of satisfying, especially when you're in like a turret section and you're being able to go like and like you're moving the iron sight over the things you want to shoot.
Oh yeah,
like that's pretty cool. But I understand that like if you're again in that like first person shooter WASTA, do everything as fast as possible. You want full vision, so you only use the iron sights if you need to aim really precisely, and you get rid of them as soon as possible.
Well, the other thing about iron sights is that if they were like realistically positioned in relation to the camera, the gun would either be too large if it was something like an AK, or too small because it's a pistol and your arm is holding it out like way out there. So from a video game presentation standpoint, none of that's really preferable. In fact, there's a good example of that. There's a first-person mod for Resident Evil 2 Remake. It just positions the camera at your character model's eye level and changes none of the animations. So you can get an idea of what a realistic-looking first-person shooter would look like by looking at that mod. It's awkward. It's cool, but it's awkward. It is nothing like any first-person shooter you would actually play, either modern or Doom era.
That is interesting as well, because that's not something I would have thought to do, but it does make sense, especially for a horror game like Resident Evil, because first-person horror has its own vibe compared to third-person horror, that it's, interesting to see how Resident Evil would feel with one perspective versus the other.
Well, that and Resident Evil 2 Remake was already built on an engine that was made for a first-person game in the first place, so I imagine it was pretty easy to mod in.
I'm sure, yeah. Does RE2 run on the RE engine?
Yes.
Okay.
All the Resident Evil games that have come out since 7 run on the RE engine.
Okay. That engine is really cool, and I hope they keep using it.
I hear they're upgrading it, actually, for the next game.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Have they shown anything for Resident Evil 9 or
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
Do you guys think they're going to remake 5 or 6 or no?
They really should at least do Code Veronica before 5. Doing 5 would be skipping to The Empire Strikes Back kind of, or The Return of the Jedi more like.
Especially since 5 is still perfectly playable nowadays.
Yeah, there is that.